and welcome to the April 7th meeting for the Los Gatos Town Council. Welcome. The first item on our agenda, as always, is the roll call.
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Mariko Sayak. Councilmember Steve Leonardis.
Here.
Councilmember Rob Rennie.
Here.
Vice Mayor Barbara Spector.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Marcia Jensen.
Here, and Councilmember Sayak is not here because of a long-standing commitment that was actually made before she was elected to council. So she is not present with us tonight. The next item on our agenda is we always welcome someone from our community to lead us in the pledge. Inderlee Goris, would you come up and join me, please? So I've had a chance to meet Inderlee and chat with her a bit. She's currently a senior at Los Gatos High School, but she has recently come to the United States from Antwerp, Belgium. And I asked her, what does she like about Los Gatos? She likes the weather. She likes the smaller community. She likes the technology in Silicon Valley. It's very different from Belgium. She, of course, misses her friends, and she misses all the places where she used to hang out. She's going to, after she graduates, spend a couple years at De Anza Community College and decide whether she wants to stay in the United States or not. She's not yet a citizen, but that doesn't mean she can't lead us in the pledge. So, Indra, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I'll give you the mic, and will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one God, under God, the indivisible, and lives for all.
Thank you, Inderlee, and your English is great, and she's working on it while she's here. Let's have a round of applause for Inderlee, and welcome. The next thing on our agenda is a little presentation from Shelane Hammock about Keep Los Gatos Beautiful Month.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. April is Keep Los Gatos Beautiful Month, and this year, on Sunday, April 19th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Town Plaza, we'll be hosting a new event called Spring into Green. It's a sustainability event to celebrate Earth Day, Arbor Day, and Keep Los Gatos Beautiful Month. To commemorate Arbor Day and the town's 35th year as a Tree City, USA, there will be a tree planting at 10:30 a.m. at Town Plaza. To celebrate Earth Day and Keep Los Gatos Beautiful Month, we'll be having environmental vendors and partners from around the local community hosting interactive booths. These partners include West Valley Clean Water Program, West Valley Collection and Recycling, Santa Clara Valley Water District, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, the Parks Commission, Happy Hollow Park and Zoo, Los Gatos, Saratoga Rec, Santa Clara County Parks, the Beautification Committee, and PG&E Vegetation Program. This is a family-friendly event with interactive activities for all ages, including free face painting, a free photo booth, and a live band. The event will take place in conjunction with Farmers Market to promote eating and buying locally. And the purpose of the event is to celebrate the town's environmental consciousness, learn more about sustainability, and to collect feedback from residents regarding green issues in town. So there's flyers in the hallway, and this is the flyer up here. And you feel free to contact me if you have any questions.
Ms. Hammock, thank you very much. Sounds fun. The next thing we'll do is April, as many of you may or may not know, is Poetry Month. So I'm going to come down. And I'm going to invite our Erica Goss to come up initially. And Mr. Morley, can I stick this thing in here? That's why you need a professional. Los Gatos is very fortunate to have its own poet laureate. It's a program we've had for a while. We're very proud of it. Erica Goss has served very ably in that role, and we're really pleased to have her here tonight. And I have a proclamation on behalf of the town of Los Gatos and the council proclaiming April to be Poetry Month, in which we celebrate, and in fact at our next meeting on April 21st, we'll do it again, to make poetry a part of our culture, part of our learning, and a part of our experience here in Los Gatos. And we're pleased also to have Henry Bankad here from our library, who helps to promote that in his work. So thank you for being here, Henry. And so Erica, thank you, and I'll give that to you. And Erica has some things to explain about a contest that she's done and some students to present. So I'll hand it over to Erica, and I'll go back and enjoy the poetry.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen, and thank you to the town council, and thank you to the whole town of Los Gatos and Henry for all of your support and for thinking that it was important for our town to be represented in the form of the literary arts by appointing me as the Poet Laureate. This is my third year and probably my last, and it's been a hugely enjoyable thing to be the town's cheerleader for poetry. I don't think I've had a single negative comment from anyone about it. It's just a complete, wonderful, feel-good thing to do for me. So I am the Poet Laureate of Los Gatos, and when I started in 2013, one of my major goals was to reach out to young people in our community and let them know that their voices were very important and that poetry is one of the best ways, I think, that young people can express themselves. So to that end, I hosted several readings for young people, and they have been wildly successful and lots of fun. And last year I started the first Los Gatos Poet Laureate Scholarship to be given to a graduating senior at Los Gatos High School who plans to continue in the art of creative writing in some facet of their life. So last year I was very happy to give the first scholarship to graduating senior Ray Pendleton, who is he is a student at NYU in the screenwriting program. So that made me very happy to be able to give that to him. And this year, as a way to fund the contest, to fund the scholarship, I created the poetry contest. And we have 4 winners. 3 of them are here today. And so we were able to raise $500 with our contest fees. So that was a very wonderful thing for us to be able to do. In case you would like to know, there are lots of other poetry-related events that are going on around the South Bay, lots of things in San Jose and Campbell and Saratoga and other towns around our area. And you can visit my website, ericagoss.com, and I have the ones that I'm doing and some other ones, and lots of information there. So I had a hard time choosing the winners because there were so many wonderful and imaginative poems. So it was tough, but somebody had to do it, and I did it. I whittled it down to the 4 winners, and the 3 of them are here today, and I know that you will agree with me that they are excellent. Our first place winner is Alina Zhang for her poem Butterfly. I chose her poem as the first place because it portrays struggles that teens often go through, but find it very difficult to talk about. The voice in this poem is mature and honest, clear, and unsentimental. Even though it's about a hard subject, the poem ends on a positive note. I would like to welcome Alina to come up and read her poem for you and receive her certificate.
Good evening. I'm Alina Zhang, and I am currently a 9th grader at Homestead High. Sadly, insecurity often ranks high on the list of problems teenagers face growing up, and sometimes it can cause us to behave in destructive ways. Butterfly. Face flushing, hair free in wind, I trudge toward the frost-glazed lake. Snide comments muttered in the halls echo in my mind and turn to shouts. I inch further to the heart of the ice. Peering into patches of water, I see what I don't want to see. My birthmark on my left cheek reflects back at me. I hurt more. Then my eyes flicker to my wrist, where a frayed bracelet peeks out from my sweater. I tug it off. Remember my sister's gentle hands tying the knot that has held to now. Her gift, despite my self-hatred, often forcing me to take my blade and cut my arm where no one would ever see, not even she. I remember her tracing my blush, whisper it was like a butterfly, as I ached for it to fly off my face to some garden where it belonged. Still, thinking of her kindness makes the nasty voices fade away until I can hear my own voice, comforting me like my sister did long ago. One step too far and ice cracks, pulling me through as numbness rushes into my veins. But I clench the bracelet, grab the slippery ledge, pull myself up, breathing in self-acceptance, and head home where my sister waits. Although the speaker in this poem is not I, self-acceptance can transform each one of us. Thank you. Also, special thanks to Los Gatos laureate Erica Goss and the Town Council for their interest and support of poetry.
Thank you, Alina. That was a very moving and very compassionate poem. Our second place winner is Lauren Finkel. She's a senior at Los Gatos High School, and she was unfortunately not able to be with us tonight. So she gave me permission to read her poem. Try to do it justice. I chose her poem because its sense of humor is coupled with an intelligent grasp of a certain situation. It's called The Millennials. They call us the Millennials. We are different, and we have a name. After all, we only name the things just out of reach. Take God, for example, or the boy who doesn't love you back. We don't trust, and we lie, and worst of all, we are skeptics. That is what the white-haired judges see, but it is not the worst. Our new idol is the revamped golden girl, the one who doesn't feel and nibbles on gold-flecked cigarettes while watching the teenage years bruise her without a whimper. So say you don't care, and I believe you, and I spit the same words back, and you believe me. Thank you, Lauren, for that poem. I would like to invite Yash Mahajani to come and join me at the podium. Yash is our third place winner, and I chose his poem because it is so very timely right now, and it talks about something that we all miss, and we got a little gift of today. We got some rain today. So Yash's poem talks about our longing for rain and also the environmental stress that our state is going through because of the drought. So please read.
Good evening. My name is Yash Mahajani, and I'm a senior attending Saratoga High School. Sadly, this poem reflects reality, but hopefully will encourage all of us to work together to save our state. I remember how green was my valley. Winters of fog and mist welcomed gray for skies of blue. Rain falling as streams rose, moisture marking a season new. I remember stepping outdoors to watch the water seeping through dustiness of summer and fall, the fertile soil to renew. Walking beside bare orchards and thinking of how they grew, in springs with leaves and blossoms, in summer with fruit anew. I remember drops gliding on long leaves, damage from sun to undo, and rainbows that followed pledge green coming too. How dry is my valley now. Thank you.
Thank you, Yash. Another round of applause for Yash, please. We had one honorable mention, and that honorable mention goes to Michelle Shen. Please come on up. Michelle's poem is just a lovely ode to the state of California, and it has a nostalgic mood that I remember because whenever I travel, I always miss home the most. So, Michelle, please read.
Hi, I'm Michelle Shen. I'm in 11th grade and attend Saratoga High School. As a teenager, I often anticipate going away to college, but last spring, I thought about all I will miss about home. Far away. To wake washed in morning light and from my bed hear birds express in song their pleasure and their plight, while I feel the sun's soft caress. To wonder how a long-legged strider at the leaf-dappled shadowy creek can stand upon 4 pearls of water as I decide more marvels I must seek. To sail upon waves in a sea of green and tie stems of daisies into a crown. To see white parachutes float serene from dandelions to nearby ground. To spy a hummingbird, his beak a dart, his throat glimmering in ruby red, his wings flitting as fast as my heart. I blink, he's gone, a blast of cold instead. If only harsh winds here could blow a hummingbird to fly in this gray sky and bring his joy to this land of snow. I shut my eyes. Just in California, I sigh. Sometimes we wish to be in faraway places, but we shouldn't forget the beauty and magic at home. Thank you to the Los Gatos Town Council for valuing poetry.
Yes, thank you to the Town Council for giving our students, our winners, this time to value their voices and to let us know how much we appreciate them as young people and as future members of our society, and as really, really fine poets in their own right. They worked very hard for this honor, and I'm very proud of them. So thank you all.
Ms. Goss, thank you very much. And our readers, thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming here and sharing your poems with us tonight. And now we're going to go on to our regular old business. Unfortunately, not a lot of poetry involved. For those of you who will be staying with us who haven't turned off your device, if you would please silence it, we would appreciate it. Thank you all. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your work with us. Now is the time in the meeting where we do what we call council matters, where members of the council report on things that they have done outside of the council meetings. We all serve on various committees, commissions, where we represent the town of Los Gatos, or that we work on issues that involve Los Gatos, and this is our opportunity to report to you and to report to each other on what we've been doing. So, Councilman Rennie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I'd first like to say I was definitely impressed with the how well written the poems were, but also how well they were delivered. If only I could deliver that well. Since our last council meeting, I attended the Parking and Transportation Ad Hoc Committee with the Vice Mayor. I would characterize the meeting as a brainstorming discussion of our work plan and how we're going to move forward. And I'll let the Vice Mayor add to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we had the Transportation Parking Ad Hoc meeting, and in addition to what Mr. Rennie stated, we were asking the staff to identify issues and come back to us with options for those issues, and we are actually meeting later this week to do just that. The Policy Committee met again, and it was establishing a work plan, because what we discovered in our meeting so far is that there is a tremendous amount of work to do, and so we need to identify and prioritize, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you. I, as the mayor, also attended the Policy Committee meeting. Of interest to perhaps the community and the council, I also attended a West Valley Mayor's meeting. The focus of that meeting was on a proposed tax measure coming on to the 2016 ballot, if it qualifies, for taxing for transportation infrastructure and the form that that might take. So we heard from VTA. We also heard from the Silicon Valley Leadership Group about what they are doing with respect to that measure. Mr. Morley, thank you, has also attended meetings in that regard, because what the VTA is doing is asking communities to identify infrastructure goals that may fall within the 25-year VTA plan and thus qualify for either grant funding or to appear potentially on a ballot measure. There's polling going on now for potential projects to be included in the ballot measure. It will go on for quite some time until it's finally winnowed down to decide what will be on it. So I wanted to give everyone an idea of what is going on there. VTA has people that you can contact regarding that. I think that they call it, I'm looking at Mr. Morley, Envision Silicon Valley. And so any information you want on that can be found through the VTA Envision Silicon Valley information. Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. On March 25th, I chaired the West Valley Sanitation District Board of Directors meeting, where we talked about financing options, specifically the West Valley Sanitation District's reserve requirements that were proposed for the $1.5 billion sewage treatment plant modifications that are occurring in the future on the San Jose-Milpitas border, and what was best for the district in terms of our reserve requirements to put up for that future project. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. And Mr. White, I'm going to ask you for manager matters, and it may be what you're going to address may be apropos of one of the poems we just heard. So, please,
yes,
Mr. White.
we'll start with that, because Yash did a great job of poetically saying what's confronting us. As the mayor raised with me in a discussion, the fact that the governor has declared a mandatory statewide 25% reduction in predominantly urban water, that puts, I think, increased pressure for the town to set a really good example in this area. The Santa Clara Valley Water District has a continued goal of 30% reduction in water. However, to date, our retailer, San Jose Water Company, has achieved only 13%. When our Public Works Director asked about how we could see a breakdown of this for the town, we can't. They don't break it down by governmental jurisdictions, so we will be pursuing that with them as we go along. We have met some of the requirements already, such as 2-day watering of some of the landscaped areas, because we are doing that. We need to continue to look at some of our median islands, particularly anything with ornamental grass, because watering that is going to be prohibited. As you know, and I've heard this is a sensitive issue, the fountain is off. It's under repairs, but then the question will have to be, do we turn it back on again anytime soon? So there are a number of issues that we will bring back to you on May 5th. And in our report to you, we will talk about what we have done, what we can do, and whether we are going to need in some fashion to earmark some additional monies to enhance our response in the town to this ongoing problem that was so poetically defined. A second item I would welcome during the next couple of weeks before the May 5th meeting, input from the council on any issues or viewpoints that you have on this that you would like to see us address in the May 5th report. The second item is just the same reminder, in effect, to the community that we have extended the deadline for vacancies on a variety of boards and commissions. And those are the Arts and Cultural Commission, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, VTA Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Community and Senior Services Commission, Parks Commission, Personnel Board, and the Plan Development Zoning Study Committee. We have, as a result of extending it, received some additional applications, but the one that we still haven't received any in is the Parks Commission. So we urge people to contact the town clerk and provide names. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. White. The next thing on our agenda is our consent calendar. A consent calendar consists of items that the staff and the council, or not necessarily the council, but the staff has determined can potentially be acted upon in a single motion, either because they've been previously considered or because they are straightforward and hopefully non-controversial. Our consent calendar tonight consists of 3 items, and I'll look to the council first and see if anyone on the council would like to pull anything from the consent calendar. Seeing no one. Anyone in the audience would like to pull something from the consent calendar? Seeing no one, I'll look to the council for a motion. Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to approve the consent calendar, items 1 through 3.
There's second. Seconded.
Second, along with the desk item on item 3.
Seconded by Councilman Leonardis with the desk item. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. So we will go on to verbal communications. Verbal communications is a time in our agenda where anyone who is in the audience can address the council on something that is not on tonight's agenda. So if you'd like to talk to about something that is not on our agenda, now is the time to do so. Other than that, we'll call the items in their order. Ms. Dorner is standing up. Other than that, we'll call the items in the order that we have in our calendar. And as Ms. Dorner comes to the podium, if you'd like to speak, you'll see that I can use her as a model, spokesmodel. She has a yellow card, which you find in the seat backs of the benches in the audience. You could fill that out with your name and you hand it to the clerk, then we know who you are. And then you get 3 minutes to talk. There's lights on the podium. When you see the yellow light, that means you have 30 seconds left. When you see the red light, that means that your time is up, and I will very hopefully politely and gently remind you that your time is up, although council people may have questions for you. Ms. Dorner.
Hello, I'm Angelia Dorner, a proud resident of the Almond Grove. I apologize if I start, if I get into a coughing fit. For some reason, since the last time I saw you guys, I feel like I've had a feather caught in my throat, but with the boa, get it? Actually, I've been fighting a cold. I just wanted to bridge the gap of what I addressed with you at the last council meeting and thought that I would give you a quick summary of the curb, gutter, and sidewalk budgets that have been addressed over the last couple of years. I don't know why I keep being drawn back to this December 17th, 2012 meeting. That ended up being a very important meeting to me with all the Almond Grove stuff going on. But at this particular meeting, At that time, there was a memo which requested approval, gave a brief description of where the work was going to be performed, and provided an estimate for the project amount. Then later, they came back to ask for authorization to execute an agreement. The following year, a similar process was involved as far as requesting specs, providing general description. They didn't give an estimate for a project, but they did come back to you to ask for authorization to execute those agreements. And there was something else very important on these two processes that I will be bringing up in a moment. This year, we basically combined the two, requesting specs as well as authorizing and to execute agreements up to a certain amount. And I wanted to bridge the gap a little with Mr. Leonardis' question about how budgets get set every year, at least based on my knowledge. Approximately $250,000 is budgeted each year for this particular project. I believe that because of the lean years, we sort of built up a beginning balance, which has been eaten up and will definitely be eaten up thoroughly by this year's authorization. But essentially, I just pulled this out of the various staff reports, and so we did start with a very healthy balance, again, I believe because things just may not have been done before. But with this, we'll be showing a $54,000 deficit, if you will, given that if we end up spending all of the monies that have been authorized to be spent. I wanted to mention that in those 2 prior years, the thing that I found really, really important, and I hope gets brought back into the process, is that with each of those, council was provided a summary that showed individual estimates determined by PPW, along with quantities and other things, as well as the various bid amounts that were provided. What that allows is for council, is that it?
Oh.
Okay.
I'm going to
That's all
ask
right.
you to wrap up.
Okay. For council to see that the lowest bid has been selected. In addition, that the range more recently of these bids has been outrageous. I will be following up with an email with some of this bid information after these bids come in this Friday, as it relates to another significant project that you know is near and dear to my heart. Thank you.
We'll look forward to it. Thank you. Okay. So I don't have any other cards for verbal communications. Next, we're going to call item number 4, which is consider authorizing the town manager to execute an agreement with Downtown Ford for the purchase of 2 gasoline-powered Ford F-250 regular cab trucks. Mr. Morley.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Matt Morley, Director of Parks and Public Works. Today, we're asking for authorization from the Council for the procurement of 2 F-250 pickup trucks, similar in size and look to the vehicle you see on the overhead. These vehicles serve our parks maintenance crews to provide maintenance services throughout our parks. The vehicles that we have now have been extended 3 years past what we typically use as a replacement cycle of 8 years for this type of a vehicle. We do an evaluation on the vehicles as they approach the replacement cycle and make a determination on whether we need to keep them additional years if they're in good shape or if they need to be replaced at that time. So we've done that for 3 years, and at this point believe that it's an opportune time to replace these vehicles. We did look at all opportunities for alternative fuel vehicles on pickups of this nature. The alternative fuel is compressed natural gas. We do have a fueling station at the yard, so that is an option. We looked at the cost associated with that and the life cycle savings associated with CNG, as well as the potential for greenhouse gas emission reductions. Weighing the costs and the environmental impacts, it seemed to staff that the recommendation should be to go with a standard gasoline vehicle, although we do provide the option for council to consider, of course, a CNG powered vehicle. The report talks a little bit about some of the other additional advantages and disadvantages of CNG from staff's perspective. With that, that will conclude the report, and I'm available for questions.
Questions for Mr. Morley? I actually have a question or something I want to make sure about in your report. You indicated that the trucks that you're contemplating are flex fuel, such that if ethane becomes available, or I think it was ethane, that they could be switched over to a different kind of fuel?
That's correct. The vehicles are flex fuel. That means that the components that they're built with are stronger to withstand a harsher fuel type, and these particular vehicles are equipped in that manner.
Okay, and I also wanted to thank you for providing us with all of the various components of the information so that we could make an intelligent determination in your report. Thank you very much. Other questions for Mr. Morley? Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Morley, just a question for the public. What becomes of the existing 2 vehicles? Do they get sold? How much are they worth? Where will that money go when they are sold?
So typically the vehicles, when they're disposed from the town, go to auction. Those vehicles are sold at the highest price. These vehicles are probably worth in the $8,000 to $10,000 range at auction. So that's one of the considerations in disposal, is do they have a residual value, and what does that mean to the town? So that value, when it comes to us, will go back to the general fund for reprogramming.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Morley, thank you. Anyone out in the audience wants to talk to us about potentially buying 2 Ford trucks? Seeing no one, we'll look to the council for questions of staff and or a motion. Councilman Leonardis.
Mayor, I'm willing to go ahead with a motion at this time, and that is to authorize the town manager to execute the purchase agreement with Downtown Ford to purchase the 2 Ford F-250 regular cab trucks in the amount not to exceed $84,733.
Questions or comments on the motion, or a second? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A second and a comment. I want to thank staff also because sort of as a follow-up on what the policy committee has been doing, or at least become sensitized, when I read the staff report and it said that the trucks met the replacement criteria, I wanted to know what the replacement criteria was, and found out that there was an administrative guideline. Then I found out that we all found out that the administrative guideline had been placed before and approved by, or at least knowledgeable to, the council back in whatever it was, the 80s or the 90s. So I want to thank staff for that information, and hopefully in the future when we have our staff reports, to provide that level of detail so that we can all understand.
Questions or comments? Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. I also would like to thank staff for including in the desk item the detail of when we replace our equipment, our life cycles on all those is very informative. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Mr. Morley, I just want to add thank you for bringing the picture. It's worth 1,000 words, because when we try to understand for somebody like me, I apologize everyone in Los Gatos, for a Ford 250 quick truck, that doesn't mean a lot to me, but 84,000 seems like a lot. So when I look at that big truck and I see what you use it for, it makes a lot of sense. So thank you very much. Are there other comments or questions on the motion? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Mr. Schultz, do I indicate that it passes unanimously with 4 council people, or for the record, or?
Yes, for the record, you should state that the 4 present voted in favor of it, and the 1 is an abstention.
Okay. So consider that done. Okay, item number 5, West Valley Clean Water Program Budget and National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit Update. Mr. Morley.
Fun stuff. So this report provides an overview of the NPDES permit and the proposed budget for the West Valley Clean Water Program. You have a desk item that answers several questions that were received from council, and a late desk item that came out today that updates the budget. The budget updates result in a total program reduction of approximately $7,000 over the budget that was provided in the initial attachment 1 to the staff report. As you can see by the screen, this program includes a jumble of acronyms, and at times, of course, it can be hard to keep track of all of these. To try and make some sense out of that, we have an interrelationship of the organizations that are highlighted in those acronyms. The permit results ultimately from the Federal Clean Water Act and helps to ensure the country's waterways are not polluted. And walking you through the relationships, the West Valley cities have got together to create a joint effort with the West Valley Sanitation District, or in contract with West Valley Sanitation District, to create the West Valley Clean Water Program, which is a representative for the West Valley cities up through regional organizations to provide a strong voice for the cities. The West Valley Clean Water Program interacts directly with SCVRP, the Santa Clara Valley Urban Runoff Pollution Prevention Program, which is a mouthful all by itself, which in turn reports up to the Regional Water Quality Board. So those are a bunch of the acronyms all in one screen there to help you see who interacts with who and what the relationships might be. Through the Federal Clean Water Act, clean water requirements continue to increase. These requirements are addressed through a permit that is reissued approximately every 5 years, and the new draft permit is approaching its final form. It's become evident in the new draft permit that reporting administration is increasing significantly, so we have quite a bit of data that we're going to be collecting coming along in the near future. We expect adoption in the winter of 2016, so fairly soon, on this new permit. And amongst other requirements, the clean water runoff requirements are increasing treating water on private development sites, so the C3 requirements, and intensified management of the town's stormwater system. The permit requirements largely take the form of unfunded mandates, and for developments, this means installation of low-impact development features, or LIDs, such as bioswales, like what we have in front of our town library. For the town, inspection requirements in the new permit for these installations increases multiple folds. So, for example, previously, one inspection would occur on these installations at the 45-day mark or up to the 45-day mark after completion of construction. And now these inspections have to occur along the construction in multiple phases as the individual LIDs are put in place. In addition to that, the individual LIDs need ongoing inspections on a rotating 5-year basis. So again, more reporting and more paperwork associated with that. And each LID must have a maintenance agreement associated with it between the town and the property owner. And again, more reporting and more transferring of information. Ultimately, we hope to pass these costs associated with these inspections and this increased workload along to developers or property owners, and staff will quantify these as the permit continues to gel and bring the plan forward for council consideration at a later point. More unclear in the area of unfunded mandates are the costs associated with trash reduction, and that's a big effort in terms of the work that staff does. The goal is a 70% reduction by 2017 and 100% reduction by 2022. Our current practice includes the installation of trash capture devices at critical water flow inlet locations. And these devices actually capture debris and trash at those locations. They're maintenance intensive. We have to go back through and clean them out, and they can clog and cause overflows, so they need that routine maintenance. Currently, we have 29 installed throughout the town in various high trash locations, but we have over 1,800 inlets in the town, over 56 miles of storm drains, so quite a big infrastructure to tackle coming forward. So as you can tell, increasing to 100% compliance with this model creates a significant ongoing body of work, and of course, more reporting. Staff will continue to look for solutions to manage the trash, including those associated costs. The West Valley Clean Water Program, the second part of the memo that we provided, consists of administrative and policy representation of the permit requirements. Because of the large amount of administrative work, the complex reporting requirements, and the need to have expert representation, the town and other West Valley cities partner with this program. The program aggregates data and provides that reporting that's becoming so important with the increased permit requirements. In addition to the reporting, the program handles processing and payment of fees, collecting fees through the property tax assessment, and then redistributing those back through the various towns and cities. The program also provides a strong unified voice through SCVRP up to the regional board, ensuring that the West Valley cities have a voice and can be heard. From town's perspective, the services of the program are invaluable towards achieving our compliance. So annually, the West Valley Clean Water Program provides their budget for review by the councils of the respective jurisdictions. And this year, the costs are going up in alignment with additional work associated with the new permit and the related activities. You have the proposed budget now in desk item B, and staff recommends approval. This concludes my report. Staff from Parks and Public Works are here to answer questions, as is Kelly Carroll from the West Valley Clean Water Program.
Thank you, Mr. Morley. Questions? Councilman Rennie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Morley, so when I'm still a little confused putting the dots together here on the budget that's in attachment B. It seems like it's broken into two sections, 1 through 5, and then 6, well, the last one's just 6 with a lot of subsections. The top part looks like town labor costs directly to us, and I guess you've also broken it into what it is for the different towns, and it looks like it's $173,000 and change. And then the second part of it looks to me like some of it's income, or is that all cost?
So the document that we provided here is the costs associated with the program, and these are not town costs, these are West Valley Clean Water Program costs.
And so you have a Los Gatos column where you go down, and then at the bottom of it you say that the Los Gatos cost is $291,000 and change. Is that out of our pocket, or that's the total? Because some of it's coming from the second part, which you just told me weren't costs to the town.
Yeah. So let me clarify there. So these are costs of the program. The program is distributed throughout the member agencies. So our percentage is that 32.5% of the total amount. So yes, the cost directly to the town is a $291,795, the bottom line. So those are expenses that come to us. There are revenues associated with that are collected from on the tax roll to the tune of approximately $336,000, I believe.
336 to us, or total all the cities?
To the town.
So that means we're actually coming out ahead then?
So there are other elements to the program. Ultimately, we balance the program to a net zero through the course of the year, but there's other elements that the town does provide. For example, street sweeping is an element that the town provides in-house that would be included in the overall program budget, but not associated with West Valley's program.
Madam Mayor, if I can keep going. So you also mentioned the need to increase fees on developers to pay for the inspections and so forth, but that seems to be included in the top 5, which you said we've already gotten enough money from property tax assessment.
Yeah, so our inspection fees are not included in the West Valley program. The inspection fees are town services that are provided in combination with other inspection services for the.
So they're not listed on this table anywhere.
So the services that the West Valley provides are the administrative side of processing the permit, collecting the fees, paying the fees for the permits, and collecting the data and doing the reporting associated with that data collection.
And so it looks like you haven't provided us a balance sheet on how much that cost and how much we collected. Do you know how much are we short, basically?
So we're working on the full program costs, and that will come forward to the council through the budget process. So in our NPDES budget, which is a program within the Parks and Public Works budget, and it incorporates the costs associated specifically with West Valley Clean Water Program, and adds that to the costs associated with the town functions, including inspections and street sweeping and inlet cleaning and those kinds of things that the town does aside from the West Valley program.
One last question on this. So then what you're really asking us to do is approve the budget from West Valley Clean Water, that they're providing the $336,000 and the work we do with it, but you're not including us to approve the other portion of it.
That's correct. That portion will come forward to you for a review and approval when we bring forward the operating budget.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Morley. Anyone from the audience want to talk to us about West Valley Clean Water? Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing and look to the council for comments, questions, and/or a motion. Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. I will move forward with a motion at this time to go with the staff recommendations on page 1 of the staff report, which is to approve the fiscal year 2015-16 West Valley Clean Water Program budget and authorize the sanitation district to collect program-related fees on behalf of the town and accept the staff report on the National Pollutant Discharge Dissemination or Elimination System. Thank you for all the acronyms as well, and also the desk item.
Thank you, Councilman Leonardis. Is there a second? Councilman Rennie?
I'll second it.
Vice Mayor Spector?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to be supporting the motion, and once again, I'd like to thank staff, Mr. Morley specifically, for the additional information, which made it possible for me to, one, better understand, and secondly, vote to support this motion.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes with 4 votes, 1 abstention. Which brings us to item number 6, which is a request for refund of application fees for the removal of a second unit, APN 510-44013, property location 12 Bayview Avenue, property owners Reed and Carolyn Hornberger. You must be Mr. Hornberger.
I am, Reed Hornberger.
Have you filled out a card for us?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Please go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, great, thank you. Thanks for your time to hear this evening. As I said, my name is Reed Hornberger. My wife, Carol, and I, we bought 12 Bayview Avenue about 16 months ago. We bought that property, the seller and developer was Todd Hill with Silicon Valley Homes. We had been in the home about 5 months when we received a letter from the city asking us about the status of our rental unit. We replied quickly that we have no rental unit, thank you. And Marnie Mosley in the planning department got back to us and said that there apparently had been an illegal conversion of a duplex into the single family home that we bought. And thus started our 8-month odyssey together with Marnie in the planning department that gets us to here. We have spent months getting through the facts. I believe it's clear that the developer did an illegal conversion of that unit prior to us purchasing that home. We think we have proof of that we presented to the council. The unit that was the upstairs of this Victorian home was never rented for the last 24 years. It was owner occupied. It was occupied by Judge McKinsey. I personally have met with Judge McKinsey several times now, and he supplied facts as to the fact that the rental unit was never occupied, et cetera. So we took all of these facts on February 25th to the Planning Commission. Our legal counsel looked at the facts with us and said that, look, the best thing to do at the city is present it and take it to them directly. Don't go through a big legal process, which we did. And we are quite happy and successful with the outcome on the 25th, where the Planning Commission unanimously agreed that the illegal status would be removed from the house. They did not find us responsible for that particular condition. As a result of that unanimous agreement, we were then asked to come here because that particular group doesn't have charter and responsibility for return of the fees and fines that were levied against us. We paid the $5,600 fee, which was required as an entrance to get in front of the Planning Commission to at least be heard. So we did that in good faith that we would come here and hopefully have that returned. My wife, Carolyn, and I are committed citizens. We've been in Saratoga for 18 years. We moved here a year and a half ago to downsize our home and our lifestyle. We are in the middle of trying to renovate the exterior of this 1908 home, and that project is now on hold or is now being started again as a result of the 25th decision. So we come here to you and ask you to please return the fees that we paid.
Okay, so let's see if we have any questions. And I apologize, Ms. Pravetti, because Mr. Hornberger jumped right up there to the podium, so we'll kind of do things out of order and have you give us the report after. So, questions for Mr. Hornberger. Councilman Rennie.
I guess my question was, it seems like something like this should have been in the disclosures when you bought the property. Did they not disclose this?
These were not disclosed to us from the seller.
And shouldn't that mean the seller's then liable for the problem and potentially the fees?
Yes, they could be.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. And Councilmember Rennie addressed my question. I was, going to restate it in another form. When I was reading the correspondence, Judge McKenzie said that when he sold the property to SV Homes, that he disclosed that there was a second unit. So when you purchased the property from SV Homes, you did not receive anything in the California real estate disclosure paperwork or the transfer disclosure paperwork that said that this was formally 2 units.
Correct.
They presented it as just a single family residence.
Right. The MLS and the title insurance was all done, showed it all as a single family home. Correct.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have you sit down, and then before I ask if there's anyone else, I'm going to ask Ms. Pravetti for the staff report.
Thank you very much. Just to add what the property owner has said, he stated the facts quite accurately. So I just want to add that it is town practice to charge fees for development applications. That was the point of the $5,600 that essentially paid for the staff time of writing the staff report, bringing it before Planning Commission, conducting the hearing, and having them make the decision. So it is a cost recovery fee. We appreciate that the current owners have inherited this situation. They did act responsibly to properly remove the second unit from the inventory. Staff empathizes with the situation, but we are recommending denial of the refund because of the precedent-setting nature of the request. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Pravetti? Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. So in reference to our town process, suppose the previous owner presented documentation which was grossly inaccurate or represented misrepresentations about what the property actually was in order to approve it in such a way, get it approved in such a way where they could resell the property and make it more marketable. How can I phrase this? Where in our process do we actually check with what's presented by the applicant and what is delivered by the applicant? In other words, if they presented schematics or drawings showing a bathroom instead of a kitchen and illustrating the property as a single-family home remodel, and we collect fees on that, isn't there some check or balance in our process where we would actually visit the property and say, well, actually, no, this isn't a bathroom. You're removing a kitchen. This isn't a single-family home. You're removing a unit. And we apparently had known that there was 2 units there because we had been delivering to Judge McKenzie a letter every year and charging him $11 and asking him about the status of his second unit. But when the application came to our staff, presented in such a way that it was a single-family home being remodeled, we kind of didn't notice that we had been sending this letter out for 20-something years. So I'm very curious about how we go about that process.
Okay. Thank you. And that was really the subject of the desk item that was delivered to the council this morning. Essentially, when our building division gets applications for remodels, we evaluate the remodel, and as you know, we have a lot of investment occurring here in the town. Oftentimes, it's just reviewed by the building inspectors. They don't know what our inventory is of second units. There are, this is the only time in the 15 years, just talking to staff, that something like this has slipped through. We have had other incidents where people have tried to do the same thing, showing a remodel, but staff was alert to the fact and they were able to catch it and work with the property owner to make sure the plans are resubmitted in an accurate form. So this one, didn't get caught, and for that we apologize. Ideally, it would have, and in other instances it has been caught and we've been able to remedy the situation. This one, unfortunately, did not.
Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. So could one assume that the applicant, the original applicant who had done the remodel, in an effort to speed this property through the process, and rather than not have to pay another $5,700 to go through Planning Commission and potentially get a denial and such, misrepresented his case to the town in order to try to expedite the process and save some money, and then pass that burden on to the buyer, the future buyer?
I can't speak for the prior owner. I think the facts, as they've been laid out to you this evening, identified that the plans that were submitted were unfortunately in error, and it wasn't until after the building was final that we recognized the error had been made.
So, Councilman Leonardis, if you argue again, I'll say you are assuming facts not in evidence. So what's your question?
I wanted to rephrase the question. I'm sorry about that. The way I presented that was, assuming that the original applicant who remodeled the property, I guess they would have had to go through Planning Commission and pay $5,700 had they presented this another way. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A similar line or a similar question. I know the issue has come up in our paperwork and here this evening that the Todd Hill Silicon Valley home, is at fault here, and you have a civil remedy there. And that has come up, and I'm going to put that aside because that's not really what I'm looking at when I evaluate whether or not we should be refunding the applicants their money. What I was looking at is the fact that the plans, the SV Valley Homes plans, showed a bathroom instead of a kitchen. And I looked at that statement and I said, all right, the town gets plans that show a bathroom instead of a kitchen. That indicates to me that the kitchen is going by the wayside and therefore there's not a secondary unit anymore, because that's one of the main components of a secondary unit. And so I raised this issue with staff because, and I guess the direct question is, why wouldn't plans that show a bathroom instead of a kitchen tell staff that the secondary unit is no longer there?
Because the applicant the prior owner represented that it was an existing bathroom and that the bathroom itself was being remodeled. So there was no way to know that, in fact, it was completely false, that they had either already ripped out the kitchen or there was no kitchen present. So we look at the plans that are submitted. We don't do the field check at the time that a plan is submitted. So we rely on the applicants and the property owners and their architects to accurately represent what is currently existing and then the proposed changes. And in this instant, that did not occur.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I'm still having a little bit of a issue here. So the prior owner showed a bathroom, and the reason that we, the town, didn't know that it used to be a secondary unit is because we didn't know that it used to have a kitchen. Is that what I hear you saying?
That's right. So we have, hundreds of homes here in town, and we have a lot of remodels occurring, and we get a lot of people who want to update, do cosmetic changes to their homes all the time. When we get a plan set, we don't go back through our records to say, what are the last building permits that were issued for that property? Let's compare whatever the last thing they legally did to what they're proposing now. Instead, we start fresh with whatever the plans are that are coming to us. We do our evaluation based on what they're representing as being existing and what they're representing as their proposal. And from that basis, we do our building evaluation. We are looking at our permit system and our procedures to see if there is a way to put into our data system red flags, so that way we know which are the hundreds of second units we have in town, so that way when an application is filed, we immediately know, aha, there is a second unit. So we have a way of checking. At the time that this particular remodel went through, we didn't have that system in place.
One more question,
Okay.
Madam Mayor. Wouldn't, as Mr. Leonardis pointed out, this specific home owned by the judge had been receiving from the town, and I thought it was yearly, but on some periodic basis, a notice requesting information about the secondary unit. Wouldn't that be a process or a data source to confirm what is or is not a secondary unit in a fairly easy way?
Ideally, absolutely. Ideally, all of our data systems would talk to one another and we would have a single place to know where everything is. But quite honestly, the management of the second unit program is a whole separate entity. So again, the systems weren't talking to each other. Ideally, I would love to have a single permit database where all the information is available to the hands of our permit technicians that take in the permit applications.
Okay, I have a couple questions. Sort of on the same lines, but not really. Regardless of what the town knew and when it knew it, there was an existing second unit in this house that was removed. According to our town code, that removal would have to go through an architecture and site application in order to cause it to be legal, correct?
That's correct.
So either that application fee to have that happen is going to get paid by SV Homes, or it's going to get paid by the home purchaser when they have to legalize that removal, correct?
That's correct.
In this case, Mr. Hornberger and his wife paid that fee.
Yes.
Correct? So we charge that fee to whoever is going to be filing that application, and that application has to be filed and it has to be approved in order for there to be a legal removal of the unit, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So has the town ever refunded a fee for an architecture and site application to ratify the removal of a second unit?
We have no record of a refund that the town has ever given in this type of situation.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, I have a card from Ken Anderson.
I am so upset. My name's Ken Anderson. I live at 110 Oak Rim Court. And I want to know why the silence. Where'd the gun store go? Who started the gun store? Who?
Mr. Anderson, are you
No, this
talking
is
about
very
item number
important. This is
6? Are
very
you talking
important.
about item number 6?
I'm talking about the Hornbergers,
Okay.
another victim. 2 years ago, this town had to spend multiple town council hours on the misrepresentation of that gun store as a sporting goods store. They knew they were selling guns, and I know the 3 owners of that gun store, and I know one of them was Todd Hill. Okay, thank you. I'm getting a little calmer. I think everyone has seen the front page, the local Mercury. He's being sued for $6 million from an investor of SV Home. And you're asking these people to pay a fee, and I understand where Steve was going. I understand I'm a citizen. Maybe I'll take a slander suit. But my point is, it is very clear to me, as a citizen of this town, that through, and if you look at the building permits, this is the way the operation is. Rick Pfaff, the contractor, his license is now suspended. He's under a citation of the contractor's licensing board. So just to make things clear here, I think the town had enough knowledge that something was going wrong here. Number one, so I went down today, and this is what happened. This is what I was told. Someone complained that there was something going on at 12 Bayview when SV Home was in there. They demoed everything before they got any permit. The inspector, I believe, which was Robert Harper, said, hey, you need a permit. So they went in and did the permit. That's when they had this guy, Diaz, a stooge, and that's the way the operation works. Carlos Diaz did these plans without the kitchen, and his kitchen's the size of it's huge. I mean, and it's a bathroom. They put it in as a bathroom. It's the biggest bathroom I've seen in my life. So anyway, and also on this permit form, maybe ask me questions because I'm running out of time. It says R3, and R3 is residential, no more than 2 dwelling units. I think that's a wake up to the people at the counter to go, oh, well, it's no more than 2 dwelling units. It should not be an assumption of 1.
Okay, Mr. Anderson, thank you. Let's see if there are any questions for you. There are not, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else want to talk about 12 Bayview Avenue? Mr. Hornberger, you get one chance because we're not debating. You're going to give us information, then we ask you questions, and then your 3 minutes are done. So then we'll engage in a debate. So anybody else? So I'll belatedly explain the process for item number 7. People who want to talk, we get a staff report that's presented by the person that wrote the staff report for us. We ask questions. We ask if anyone would like to talk to us about that. They get 3 minutes. We can ask those people questions. We ask for anyone else. And unless there is an appeal, which this is not, we do not have people come back up again. We have a council discussion and a motion, and then we decide at that point. So seeing no one else, I'm going to close the public hearing. Look to the council for any questions they may have of staff, comments, and/or a motion. Councilman Rennie.
So I will go ahead and make a motion then. I believe that we should grant the request for refund of the application fees for the removal of the second unit, APN 510-44013, the property location 12 Bayview. And I am concerned about setting a precedence to removing fees. We set fees to pay for our staff time so that we don't have to pay for them at other places in town. But when I think about this, we in the town staff did make some mistakes here, so we are complicit somewhat in the issue. I realize that the homeowners are, they tried to correct the problems. So I'd say they tried to do what was right and bring the application forward to correct the problem. And really all they've done is correct the problem. They didn't get anything else out of the fees. I had also thought about it's really the seller that should be paying the fees because they didn't disclose. But then when I start thinking about SV Home is now defunct, and even before the last speaker, I knew that there's no way you're going to get any money out of them with their legal problems. It's sort of a double unfortunate victim for the homeowners. So for that reason, I'll go ahead with that motion.
Let's see if there's a second. Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to second the motion and support it for a little bit different reason. Not to have the town pay the applicants because of something SV Homes did wrong, but because we, the town, had information where we could have, at a minimum, or should have at a maximum, known that there was no secondary unit there any longer. And so for that reason, I'm supporting the motion.
Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. I will also support the motion. And I also believe that probably with the building inspectors visiting the property and requiring a demolition permit, he was probably aware that a kitchen was being torn out, and he could have conveyed that information to the Community Development Department as being different than the information that he had at the time of his inspection. So we were probably aware of what was happening, and if the maker of the motion would be willing to amend the motion, I would go so far as to say, in the future, if the individuals or the principals of SV Home come forward and they want to submit a development application, that we can first recover this funds from them if they decide that they want to come forward and build in our town again. I don't think the town should be at a loss for our time and money, but I'll leave that up to the maker of the motion if they wish to amend the motion.
Councilman Rennie?
Could I ask Mr. Schultz if that's a reasonable thing to put in the motion?
That's an interesting concept. I wouldn't hinder council if they wanted to make that motion and add it to it, but it could be legal challenged at another time. I'd probably, if SV Homes ever came in again, we would try to collect that fee if that's council's desires. And if it was challenged, then I'd have to do the research on that and see if we could do that without a formal hearing, making a determination that they were responsible for the fee.
I'm okay with the idea because then the money goes back to who should really owe it. I hope the other supporters of the motion will, so I'll go ahead and allow that to be added.
That depends on whether the seconder is going to agree. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. The seconder does not agree to that amendment to the motion. I think we're mixing up issues here, and we're mixing up issues that are not before us, and we are potentially looking at a legal action.
Councilman Rennie, you don't have the support of a seconder. Do you want to stay with your amended motion or go back to your original motion?
I'll go back to the original motion, please.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. It's seconded by the Vice Mayor. I am not going to be supporting the motion. I am very sympathetic to the Hornbergers. However, I think it's absolutely quintessentially a civil action that you have against SV Homes. I understand that SV Homes is in a lot of difficulty for apparently understandable reasons, but the town code requires that the Planning Commission or some decision maker shall make a finding that the proposed elimination without replacement of a secondary unit is consistent with the town's housing element, and then must find demolition requirements by another town code section that we have. Having served on the Planning Commission for many years, we take those things seriously. People come in and the Planning Commission goes through and makes those decisions, spends time to make those decisions. I understand that the town didn't immediately find out that this was, the plans they got were wrong. However, no matter what, someone was going to have to come in and apply to legalize the removal of that secondary unit. So the fees were going to have to get paid. The Planning Commission was going to have to spend the time. The staff was going to have to spend the time. So there's no question but that hearing had to happen. The question is, well, who was going to pay for it? And that's quintessentially a civil suit. And the town cannot be in the business of either guaranteeing the actions of a contractor or a developer or ensuring monies that are paid by someone to go through a process in our town code, or to refund fees that were paid to accomplish a process that's required in our town code. So I understand that you're going to walk away with the money from the town because I'm the only one that's going to vote against it, but I can't vote for it because I don't think that it's action that we should be taking. I think that it's a legitimate collection of fees. I think it's done to comply with our town code, and I think your remedy is with the developer. So I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. So that motion is going to pass 3-1 and 1 abstention. So we'll go on to item number 7, which is another request for a refund. Sorry. Yes, Councilman Rennie.
I'd like to inform the council that I have a conflict of interest with this one. It falls within my radius of conflict of interest from my home, so I will recuse myself and say good night.
Good night. Thank you. Item number 7, request for refund of demolition of fine, APN 510-18-045, project location 130 Massel Avenue, property owner Dieter Schmidt. And I'm going to first ask for the staff report, and there's Ms. Savage. Hello.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. We are here tonight to consider a matter requested by a council member and the property owner regarding a reimbursement of a fine. The property owner paid a fine in 2010 and 2011 for the demolition of a contributing structure in a historic district and is now requesting reimbursement of that fine paid. While staff is empathetic to the situation, staff is recommending denial of the request because it is a precedent setting. This concludes staff presentation, and we are available for any questions.
Does anyone have a question for Ms. Savage, Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I may have misunderstood. Did you say that the applicant and the council member is making this request, or did I not understand you?
Made the request to place the item on the agenda, but not request. The council member is not requesting the refund, but just to place the item on the agenda per the request of the refund by the applicant.
And Vice Mayor, the mayor agreed to put it on the agenda. So there's your 2 council people.
I got it. Thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Savage? Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. So I was going through the material on this, and there was quite a bit. It said somewhere that there would be a process or an administrative process where if the applicant, the owner, was levied the fine, that they would have a chance to appeal that to the Planning Commission, and there would be a hearing. Am I understanding that correctly from what I'm reading?
There is a process in the town code to appeal the fine for a historic demolition, yes.
So follow-up question, if I may. I didn't see any correspondence or any kind of offers to the applicant of this process. I'm not aware if the applicant had knowledge of this process. It seems as though the applicant was offered some kind of a payment plan, and that was perhaps it. So I don't know if you know the history, if they were offered a opportunity to go through this administrative process or not, if they weren't not even aware of it, and they just said, oh, this is my only option. I have to pay this fine, otherwise I can't finish my project.
We don't have any written record of an offering, nor do we have written record of offering them a payment plan. We met several times with the property owner and staff to come up with a plan for the payment of the fine, and staff's recollection is that the item at the time was to get the building permit issued so that he can continue construction.
One more question, Madam Mayor, thank you. So in reference to the payment plan and how that came about and the policy behind that, who created that or who came up with that idea?
Staff worked quite diligently with the applicant and closely with other members of the staff to find a means to be as empathetic with the property owner as possible. And considering the amount of the fine, we found that although the town code stated that the fine had to be paid prior to issuance of the building permit, that it seemed reasonable to allow partial payment of the fine with the payment agreement.
One more question, if I may. To date, how much has been paid on the payment agreement?
More than $80,000.
So is it paid in full at
Yes.
this time? Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you. I just have one card, and that's from Ms. Dorner. I assume Mr. Schmidt wants to talk. Are you Mr. Schmidt? Mr. Schmidt, did you want to speak? You don't have to.
you for the invitation. I'm Dieter Schmidt. Residence is 130 Massal. There are two things have come up recently. One of them is the payment plan. Well, the offer was made by staff. You can pay in 4 payments instead of one. Big deal. The big problem is whether it was incumbent on staff to inform the contractor, the architect, and the owner, meaning me, to sign an affidavit that they understood what they were about to do. And that was never offered. Never. Nobody was asked to, I wasn't asked to, and the contractor wasn't asked to. So based on that one, I requested the refund. They used percentages. I was told at first it had to be moved in a contiguous fashion. And since that wasn't done, the Old Folks Committee, Preservation Committee requested that the boards had to be realigned. So the contractor went ahead and separated the walls, which was the first reason why we were fined. Then after I complained, I was told that the drawing says a 39.1% and the trigger was 40%. But it was so close, so they asked for the architect to be called and to sign an affidavit that he understood the problem. That wasn't done either. So based on all of these things, and as I outlined it in this verbose document I gave you, that's why I requested the refund. Or at least you guys should sit down and redo your rules and regulations so it's easier to understand, because it caused a lot of confusion for me and the contractor as well as the architect. If you have any questions, what I said in the document, please ask me.
Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. So, Mr. Schmidt, were you ever offered the opportunity for an appeal through the Planning Commission?
No.
So there was nobody on our staff that ever informed you of our process?
No, you pay or you don't build. And
Okay.
by that time, of course, a die had been cast. We had to get out of the house we were living in, so I had to get going. But there was no offer to appeal, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Ms. Dorner.
I'm sure Mr. Silva, who is going to be up next, will offer. Oh, I'm Angelia Dorner, proud resident of the Almond Grove. Having a historical home myself, I am thankful, so thankful, that back in 1997 I got approved the first time through HPC. I used all the right materials, I used all the right things, and I didn't have to move anything on my property. I just added some things towards the back. I've had the opportunity over the last year, obviously more than that, but really the last year, speaking with so many people in these historical districts who have had similar situations as Mr. Schmidt, primarily relating to conflicting directions and between the HPC committee and their understanding of how to comply with what they're being requested to do, and back-ended directions or complaints or, stop the presses when they're in the middle of construction. I have experienced it just right around the corner from me, as well as just a block over, not including Mr. Schmidt's property. In his specific situation, I understand perfectly with this situation, and then how in the world do you do this without separating them and putting them back together? I just think the whole rationale of saying, not to create a precedence is true on one hand, because there are so many bad people out there that they just don't care at all about participating with governance or anything else because of the way that these situations have affected their personal lives and the monies that they have spent on constructing their own homes, especially in areas that they're doing their darndest to maintain the historical aspects. So I want to thank Mr. Schmidt for coming forward and asking, and that if you do decline this, that maybe the fees and things that you're collecting, obviously I don't think $88,000 was spent on staff time on his project, maybe that goes back into his neighborhood for improvements. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you. George Silva.
Good evening. My name is George Silva. I live at 125 Masal, across the street from Mr. Schmidt. I too had a house that went through the HPC, and we have renovated it, and we did that in 2011, so I understand the process. I've become very close with Mr. Schmidt just from a neighborhood standpoint and friendship standpoint. When he explained the process that occurred to him in this particular incident, I was quite taken back at the penalty of $88,000. And I asked him what was the appeal process associated with that. He said there was not an appeal process. He said it was either pay the fine or get red tagged. As I live across the street, I mean, to have it red tagged and just be nothing but an empty lot or a dilapidated house would be taking impact to my own value of my own house. So for what it's worth, mine is that the $88,000 seems out of line associated with the penalty that evidently was incurred, and that I would ask the council to do an investigation to at least assign someone to look at the penalty, to look at the costs incurred, and at least have something in line with what the result was. I mean, if you look at the house today, it's probably one of the most beautiful houses on the street, on Masal. I think you could get the residents of Masal, a number of them, to come in and say that same thing. And so I would ask the council to reassess the penalty, look at lowering it at best case, if not eliminating it, because it is totally, in my humble opinion, totally out of line with the result that he had to go through.
Questions? Thank you, sir. I don't have any other cards. I'm going to close the public hearing and look to the council for any questions. Actually, before I say questions, comments, or motion, I actually have questions for either for Ms. Savage, Ms. Pravetti, or Mr. Schultz. I'm not sure. One of our staff reports, either the desk item or the main staff report, indicates that the Historic Preservation Committee is going to be hearing the issue of whether it ought to review its demolition penalties in April. Has that happened? And if not, when is it scheduled?
It's scheduled for later this month, and it is the broader question regarding penalties. It's not a specific case. Ms. Savage could elaborate.
Right.
That is correct, and it was previously discussed last month at their meeting to some degree, but it was continued to their meeting on the 22nd of April.
Right. So I understand that it's a broader question of determining whether or not the HBC wants to recommend any changes in the fine structure or schedule. But I just wanted to see when that was going to take place. And I had assumed that it came out of Mr. Schmidt's request.
It did, yes.
Correct? Okay. My second question is maybe to Mr. Schultz or to Ms. Pravetti, I'm not sure. If Mr. Schmidt had undergone an appeal process per our code, I'm assuming that during the pendency of the appeal, a building permit could not have been issued in any event until the appeal was resolved, correct?
That's correct. It would have been red tagged, and then the appeal would have had to take place while it was red tagged.
Right. So if the interest was in building, then one would pay the fine, correct? Well, I mean, presumably because pending the appeal, you couldn't do anything. Okay. Other questions, comments, or a motion? Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. I mean, when I read the record and I look at all the information, you know, obviously there's the amount of the fine. That's one thing. There is whether the siding light up or not, and whether there was 40% demolition and all these other things. But really, to me, the heart of the matter becomes, was Mr. and Mrs. Schmidt offered their proper due process? Were they really offered the opportunity for the appeal? And to me, it appears, based on what staff, Ms. Savage said, and what Mr. Schmidt said, that they were never offered this option. They were offered an option, pay the fine or you won't get your building permit, which was actually not necessarily created out of any kind of council policy. And there was some kind of an agreement prepared and some kind of a payment plan, which I understand the staff was trying to help Mr. Schmidt in some fashion or be empathetic, as they suggested, but it wasn't due process. And I think in this case, at the very least, Mr. Schmidt should potentially be refunded his money and then given an opportunity through the Planning Commission to be heard. And then perhaps, whatever the outcome of that is, then we move forward with if there's any kind of penalty due. I mean, it's a very curious process the way it went about. I know that there could have been other, not unsimilar to the last incident, there could have been some issues with oversight or whatever when it came to staff or whatnot. So, I mean, I'm inclined, and again, I'm not trying to set precedents here this evening and refund everybody's money who has a complaint in a situation, but in this particular case, I really feel like they weren't, the town violated its own policy. We didn't offer him the opportunity for the appeal process, or there's no documentation demonstrating that we did or we made any efforts in that regard. We only offered him one option, which was not created out of council policy. So I would go ahead and make a motion to refund the money that he put up for the fine, and I don't know about accrediting him some interest over the last couple, 3 years, or what a reasonable rate would be for that. But I would even consider doing that on the basis that Mr. Schmidt wasn't offered the correct process or due process in this matter, and go from there. So that would be a motion.
See if there's a second. Okay, there's a motion and there's no second. I'll look to the remainder of the council for either a new motion, questions or comments. Okay, seeing none. I will try a motion and be the exact opposite. We only have 3 people here. And my motion is to deny the request. And that motion is based on the fact that the documents indicate that there was indeed an illegal demolition. Having served on the Planning Commission, I sound like a broken record, for many years, and also the Historic Preservation Commission, and also the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Commission after the earthquake. I've been through a lot of these. I've been through a lot of things in the Almond Grove. And I've been through a lot of occasions when there have, in fact, been illegal demolitions. And in a town that takes so much time and effort to preserve its historic structures, its historic neighborhoods, and its historic buildings, it makes sense that we put a penalty structure in place, because oftentimes what would happen is that the person would come in and say, oops, I knocked it down. And then the Planning Commission, the Town Council, and the Historic Preservation Committee had absolutely no recourse. It was knocked down and there was nothing we could do. So in order for there to be a deterrent from knocking something down and saying, oops, the Town Council put in place our codes and ordinances, one of which is the demolition, and we also have a fine structure if there is an illegal demolition. It's clearly stated in our codes, 2910-09030, and there is a collection of penalty fees that is laid out in lots of detail. And then there is a specific code section, 2920255, or I'm sorry, 2920265, for hearings that deal with an appeal of an unlawful demolition. And this is the lawyer in me, I apologize, but there is no obligation on the part of the town to affirmatively tell someone that they have an option under the code. it's actually the responsibility of the person taking the action to be aware of what the code is, to look it up, to go through those ordinances. If the town is helpful in pointing that out, that's to be commended, but there is no due process obligation. I, as a prosecutor or a police officer, have no obligation to tell someone it's illegal to rob the store. So I don't have an obligation to say what the appeal process is. I'm sorry that Mr. Schmidt has found himself in this situation, but I do not think it's appropriate for the town to refund fines that are duly imposed. Mr. Schmidt has undertaken a process, and the HPC has undertaken a process to review our fine structure if it's too onerous. That's pending, and I think that's the place for it to be addressed. So my motion is to deny the request. And now I'll look for a second. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to support the motion. I agree that this was an illegal demolition. I can appreciate neighbors, people in the community appreciating how the structure turned out, but it was an illegal demolition. And as a practical matter, the applicant did not want to delay the construction of his home. He did not want to get red tagged. Going through an appeal with the Planning Commission would have taken time. So for all of the reasons that the maker of the motion stated, and for those additional reasons, I'm supporting the motion.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and I take it that's a second. Okay, so Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. And I agree with, of course, what both of you have stated. And obviously this is meant to be a deterrent. But in this particular case, I think this family is the only family that's ever been on the hook for this particular thing. And I don't want to go around pointing out projects in town, but it seems like there was particular effort or lack of effort to inform Mr. Schmidt of the process. And I agree with you that if you rob a store, you should probably know better. The policeman doesn't have to tell you that it was against the law. They just put the handcuffs on you. But it is the policy of our town, I believe, to give the applicants all the information and all the options when they come through in the fairness of good governance. And in this particular case, I really feel like we were so focused on collecting a fine and holding this family's feet to the fire, when in fact they were under duress of getting their project finished and getting their home done, that they agreed to something that they probably otherwise would not have agreed to had they been presented another option. So I can't go and speak for everybody, but I have nothing in the record that supports otherwise from our point of view. And I have to go off of the testimony and the written correspondence of the Schmidts. I do appreciate the rules, and I do appreciate the rules as a deterrent. But I will not be supporting the motion because I feel like there was some, that we could have done a better job informing this individual of the process and his rights, and not necessarily trying to influence them to make a decision that cost them all this money. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
It passes 2-1 with one recusal and one abstention. And Mr. Schultz, I'm assuming that that is okay, or do we have to have it in front of a council of more people?
I was just trying to find your council policies that you passed in the last 2 months, because I believe it required a majority of council to pass any motion, which would be 3 members, so the matter wouldn't be decided if that is the case. I'm hoping that maybe you can refresh my memory if we put that in the context. If not, I can find it, or
Actually, I think it's important enough that we find that and figure it out, because if it requires a majority, we don't have that, and so we'll have to put it on another date.
A motion must by a majority of the council. So therefore, the motion still would fail.
Okay,
And
so-
the item's still open for deliberation, or it can be continued until you'd have your fourth member.
Okay, so my question is does it just say a majority of the council, meaning a majority of 5, or does it mean the majority of the council
Of the full
sitting?
council.
Of the full council, okay. Can you read that section to us, just into the record?
A motion must be adopted by the majority of the full council.
Okay, so that means the motion fails because it is not adopted by a majority. And now the question is, do we need to continue it to a date certain, or can we put it on our agenda at a time that works for our agenda?
Time that works for your agenda would be fine.
And do we need to announce that this evening, or do we need to determine that
No,
and then
just-
notice it properly?
No, we did not even notice this under the public hearing requirements because there's no permit or conditional use permit or other requirements that are required under the law. So you can just set it for another agenda when we know there'll be the fourth member.
Okay. So, Mr. Schmidt, what that means for you is that your request is still alive, and that the full council, when we do have full council, which will be 4 people, because Mr. Rennie will continue to be recused, will then hear it on a date to be determined that is going to fit with our schedule, and we'll try to put it in on a date that's coming up, and staff will consult with you as to your availability as to when we can put this on, but we'll come on for another hearing at another date. And we'll retain all of the documents, and we'll have the minutes, and and the council member who is not here will be able to review what happened this evening. So you will hear what that date is when it gets set. Okay? Yes, Mr. Silva. Then it'll fail. Mr. Schultz.
It would fail. In addition to that, though, with time permitting, I would put in an FPCC letter to find out about whether Mr. Rennie could hear this item, because he is 472 feet out, and I don't believe whether this is granted or not to refund it. It's not like the typical use permit that you're granting, a second story or something of that nature. It's already been built. So it might be determined that he does not have a financial interest in being able to hear this, so we could have the full council.
Okay. So we will determine what date this will be heard, and that may be delayed a little bit if Mr. Schultz does in fact go and get that opinion, because sometimes it takes some time. So the request is still pending, and it is not now denied. The motions tonight failed for lack of meeting our rules for passing by a majority. So we'll let you know what the next date is. And with that, we are adjourned.